p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And to start, Shelley, would you like to take roll call?
Thank you, Chairman Mojica. Commissioner Mary Lowry.
Present.
Vice Chair Tracy Quick.
Here.
Chairman Dylan Mojica.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Acevedo. Should be joined. Thank you, Justin. And Commissioner Cecil Hernandez is absent. We do have a quorum of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All right. Okay. So our business tonight is first off, we have a consideration to approve the October 6th, 2022 meeting minutes, followed by the consideration to approve the December 7th, 2022 meeting minutes, followed by consideration of the proposed site plan for the Hill Street redevelopment project consisting of 64 age restricted attached dwelling units located at 450 South Hill Street, also known as Hill Street School, case number SP-22-04.
Chairman, just a point of order for the record. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cecil Hernandez in attendance. Thank you.
Good to see you. All right, so for our first business item, the consideration to approve of the October 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written. I second that.
I'll second it.
All right, so all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Yeah.
All right, so the consideration to approve the December 7th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I motion
Second.
All right, motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. So our third business item, consideration for the proposed site plan of the Hill Street redevelopment project, case number SP-22-04. Dana, were you going to lead us into that?
I am. Thank you very much, Chairman Mojica, Commissioners. Pleasure to see you all this evening in person and for you to consider this item. I'll just let you know that Sally Schwen and Dan Clockey, the applicants, are available in attendance as well. So I'm intending to give a brief presentation and then turn it over for question and answer to Planning and Zoning Commission. Okay, and again, just remind everybody there's not a public hearing advertised or required for this. However, the Chairman and the Commission are fully aware that there should be some public and members of the public in attendance that might want to discuss or provide a comment at the end of the discussion. So that said, Hill Street School redevelopment site plan approval is, as it's agendized, basically the city zoning code requires that any multifamily developments with more than 40 units receive Planning and Zoning Commission approval, site plan approval. Chairman, Commissioners, let me know if you need any additional information or would like a packet.
Yes, can we have just one more, please?
It'll take us just a second.
I'll speak very slowly and just get you all up to speed. I think most of you recall, I think almost a year ago, February 8th, in January of last year, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard the rezoning request by the applicants for this property to facilitate the development that you're going to review, the site plan that you're going to review this evening. Ultimately, like I said, on February 8th, the City Council did adopt the planned area development for this site. And that's the location that we're discussing there at it's a triangular shaped parcel with Hill Street on the east, Hill Street on the west, Devereaux Street on the east, and Maple Street to the north. So a triangular shaped parcel surrounded by right-of-way, if you will. And then you can see, I'll just quickly cover the zoning districts at this location. You see Ash Street and Hill Street intersection is effectively gateway to our downtown from the south, historic downtown. So in the particular property, obviously, is a historic landmark and a school building that's very prominent on that street frontage. This area in red, in the dark red, is or bold red, is C3 zoned. That's our most intense commercial zoning designation. Then you see to the north, the brown is R2 or single duplex, single family or multifamily development zoning. And then to the east, you see NS, which is neighborhood services, which is kind of a transitional commercial to residential type of development that allows multifamily and office uses and things that are compatible or a good transition to residential uses. And then just to the south of that NS, you see C2, which essentially flanks Ash Street off through this corridor here as you head to the east. And then to the south is TR, or Transitional Residential Zone, that operates very similar to the NS, but more residential based, but it does allow office uses as well. So this location is a convergence of 5 different zoning districts. I'm not too sure what order those have occurred, but obviously there was some planning in the past that designated these areas for instance, a lot of that residential or the C3 area was developed as single family homes. And now they slowly converted homes to businesses, and there are some homes and some multiple unit dwellings in that area, in that portion. But anyway, this is the future land use. There are a lot of legal non-conforming uses surrounding, and for instance, also to the north in the R2, Thema offices are right there. It's a commercial office in the R2. It used to be, I think, a service station at one time. So we have a usual mixed match of zoning and uses going on. The opposite corner there on Maple and Devereaux from Thema is to the east is it looks like a building that was developed for commercial, and there's a house in between. But that building that is located there hasn't been occupied from what I can tell for some time. So that's the orientation of the zoning. Hope you all have your packets available, and that we're looking at that site shown in the center of the screen. So that planned area development that City Council had approved back on February 8th included basically 3 primary modifications to the underlying zoning. Again, that underlying zoning C3. So that does not allow, that multiple dwellings, 3 or more by a conditional use permit. So the rezoning effectively made that permitted use. So it allowed the multifamily up to 64 dwelling units on that site. That's number 1. Number 2, that it also reduced the minimum building setbacks on Maple Avenue and on Hill Street. Just to give you a little quick background on that. So this area is also anticipated in the future and has been discussed to be part of the overlay to the Downtown Historic Preservation Overlay District. I know we've talked about it before. Hopefully you might see that rezoning in the future. But anyway, what that overlay zoning district does over the downtown is basically establishes that, okay, these are some really old buildings downtown. There's this character and context that is very important to the city, as well as those natural architectural resources. And we want to keep this 0 setback zero lot line kind of configuration down here. In addition, that historic preservation overlay district also to that, but it basically recognizes that this is a downtown. We want to bring buildings to the streets instead of use our typical 20-foot setbacks and things like that. So that was a part of this request. And then lastly, no on-site parking requirement was also a request of the applicant. It's obviously a very small site. I think it's about 38,000 square feet, and probably 40% of that's already consumed by an existing building. And the developer is proposing to add an additional building on that residential building on that site of 3 stories in height. Back to that HP overlay, that overlay district also recognizes that here in the downtown was largely developed prior to automobiles or prevalence of automobiles. So there really wasn't a lot of accommodation for on-street parking at that time. So one of those HP overlay standards is also to say we need to be flexible with the parking. We know most of these businesses or buildings, properties that were developed in the HP district or downtown don't have parking on site. It's all off site for the most part or on street. So anyway, so in many ways, this development kind of was looked at as an extension, I think, of the historic downtown and the things that go along with it. Here was the site plan that was a part of the PAD rezoning request. And you've all seen that before. You see, so north is to the left, the existing school building there on the right side, and then the proposed addition flanking Maple Street or fronting Maple Street, and then a central park area. This is the site plan that was submitted. I'm going to move on to the landscape plan because it's much easier to tell what's going on instead of all of these notations. But you did receive this. There was a slight adjustment since the neighborhood meeting last week with regards to the APS transformer locations. Originally, the applicant was proposing to have a transformer closer to Maple Street near the new construction. And through discussions with the city as well as APS, realized there are a few more another transformer and a switching cabinet that might be necessary. So those consume those on-site spaces you see there. Again, north being to the left. You see on Devereaux Street, though, those transformers. APS has a standard clearance requirement for those to be able to access them, get around them, and so forth. So that's something that the developers continue to work through, but they are showing those accessibility requirements and clearance areas on the plan. Other than that, like I said, I think the landscape plan shows a lot more or easier to kind of orient. North is to the top of the screen. So what the site plan includes is 64 new dwelling units for ages 55 and up. 58 of those units will meet the state's affordable housing guidelines. Intent is to rehabilitate and adapt the historic school building for 26 apartments, including a common laundry room as well, and a large community gathering flex space, which is the the former gymnasium, which I believe is a 2-story volume space there on the south end of that historic building. School building, and then a new 3-story apartment building. You see interior corridor loaded, elevator accessed and interior stairwell. The elevator is located right here in between the 2 buildings to provide direct access to either building, whichever resident or guests would be visiting, as well as the required ingress-egress stairwells. And there's still the main stairwell that's preserved in the center of the historic school building. With regards to the unit mixes, there's 1 studio unit, 53 1-bedroom units. So between those two, 85%, if you will, are 1-bedroom and a studio. And then the remaining 15% would be 16 2-bedroom units, and then 1 3-bedroom unit is over the in the kind of that round rotunda area there on the top floor of the building, 3rd story building corner here. Again, the proposed design complies with our historic design guidelines. And I'll point to a few of those elements that are compliant when we get to the elevations. You see the large open space landscape amenity in the center. One of the discussions we had during the zoning was how are we going to memorialize the historic nature of that building? The developer agreed, yes, we need a seating area, a reflection area, and a placard area, or an area that we can provide some sort of history of the building and the architecture, and that's to be located right, historic plaque and bench seating, where you see that Hill Street label right there at that corner. There's a bench fronting Hill Street, and then the placard, and then another bench fronting kind of that open entry mall area going up to that front entrance of Hill Street, so the school building from Hill Street. The plan also include a new 5-foot wide sidewalk on Devereaux and Maple, as well as new curb and tree landscape islands on Devereaux and Maple, a perpendicular parking improvement on Devereaux, as well as a trash enclosure at the existing terminus of Devereaux. And then again, finally, the building is designed, both the rehabilitation and the new construction are all designed to comply with energy efficiency codes. I think that's one of the requirements of the developers grants and lending. So with that, there's an updated photo simulation. You're looking at Hill Street School from Hill Street, and then the new building on the left there. And one of those elements that the design guidelines points out for new construction within a historic district, or when you're building new architecture on a historic site, we want to make sure that we preserve the focus on the historic building, the historic architecture. We don't want to have a building that's designed to take away from the significance of that architecture, or not. It's supposed to essentially kind of have a similar context and color, and not stand out or take away or draw your eye away from that the historically significant building there. So that's exactly what they've done. You see, these are the colors intended. I'm about to scroll through the elevations, which don't look like those colors, but just know the color scheme was that prior photo simulation. There's the Hill Street School. As you see on the bottom, we're looking from Hill Street. On the top, you're looking from Devereaux. Right now, obviously, the building goes right up to the asphalt. Again, there will be a 5-foot sidewalk and parking, and then some planter islands installed along that frontage to start to soften that edge between the asphalt street and that existing building. And then there's the side elevations. On top left is looking at the round part from Ash, if you will. The Ash elevation, you see the new architecture in the background on the left of that building. And then just to the right of that elevation, you see the blank wall, or the north-facing wall of Hill Street School building. And they're showing kind of where they're cutting in the future hallways to connect to that. The hatched area you see is the elevator shaft. And then on the bottom are entrances on both sides. You'll see that in another elevation. So directly underneath on the bottom left, we're looking at Hill Street. Again, we're looking from the east at the side of the new construction. And then Maple would be right on the right-hand side of that building, right here. And that's that wall facade that will be along Maple. And there's probably a 5-foot planter, a 3 to 5 foot planter that runs at the base of the building, where they'll bring in shrubs and soften, again, that sidewalk to building facade space. As of now, it's retaining wall, and then the asphalt paving and the chain link fence and sidewalk. So you see one of the building entrances. This entrance would be the primary entrance from Devereaux, and then the historic building there to the left. And then on the bottom right-hand side, we're looking at the new construction from the Hill Street side. And again, you see the main entrance there, the double doors that open up to the landscape open space area. All right, and then that's all the new construction elevation. On top is the elevation looking from, so that would be Hill Street School on the right-hand side. And then new construction. And then below that is a view from Hill Street School, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, it would be the view from Maple elevation. And again, you can see some of that grade change as we go north on Maple. The roadway drops actually from the elevation of the site. So that said, moving on. So on-street parking has been the number one, I think, focus of attention. I'll get to the neighborhood meeting discussion that we had last week shortly, but I'll quickly just cover on-street parking, what was discussed at the time of the rezoning. The applicant's proposing to do the perpendicular parking on Devereaux, which we're able to increase parking along Devereaux and on that side, particularly on that side of the street, as well as along Maple, which would actually not be perpendicular, that's parallel parking. And then there's existing parallel parking there on Maple as well as on Hill Street. The applicant is to promote alternative modes of transportation for residents. They discussed that last week, as well as at the time of the rezoning. We know Cobra Valley Transit currently provides a stop at all of our other three multifamily, two of which are in the city, one in the county, but we have three other multifamily complexes, two of which were the last two developments, residential developments in the city that were 15 years ago. So the one behind Wendy's and Fry's there, they have their own stop for Cobra Valley, as well as there's one out on, I can't think of the area, but out behind Ace Hardware. And it's a senior housing development as well. But those are the two newest, most current architectural developments we've had in the city for residential development. I think we've had about 10 or 12 certificate of occupancies for single families in the last decade or so. So obviously bringing in this additional 64 units is a big shift for the city in the past 15 years. That said, we know transportation and its location is ideal in many ways for a not automotive dependent type of development. It's located very close to Safeway, all the existing transit routes, the senior center, the VFW, a number of restaurants, and all the commercial on Street, as well as on Hill Street. And then obviously it's in walking distance to our downtown too. Lots of goods and services, as well as on this section of Ash Street as well. So we know, no on-site parking wouldn't work anywhere, everywhere, obviously. And it would only work typically in an area that can serve pedestrians, which this location happens to be. So I think that was a primary rationale of the City Council's decision to move forward with all on-street parking for this development. If the surrounding businesses or residents are experiencing parking problems after development, the city can have a handful of different ways to make sure it's equitable and that there's not somebody hogging spaces and that our business can continue to survive. We can post hours of parking, which will restrict obviously overnight, and self-show certain parking spaces around certain businesses, or issue parking permits for residential uses. There's a couple, I'll show you a little analysis we did walking around and looking at surrounding neighborhoods. Who has the number of required parking spaces per our zoning ordinance and who doesn't? And for the most part, everybody does have the ability to park on site, with a couple of exceptions I'll show you. And then the city does need to also look at our parking codes and how we utilize on-street parking. We need to develop a long-term parking plan for the downtown. It's been an ongoing issue, and that's still very, very topical to the city in our future planning efforts around the downtown. And then city also and the developer will continue to promote ridership and alternative forms of transportation in the area, including adding that Cobra Valley Transit stop at the location. I think the applicants also, in other developments they've developed, other projects they've developed, they've included some sort of transportation options. I can let them speak to that if you're interested. So really quickly, just that parking area. So we analyzed or just took a look at all the available parking in the surrounding neighborhoods. Here on Hill Street, we've got two homes. One's a duplex. To the south here is a duplex. They've got two-car tandem parking spaces right now. So that applicant or that property owner just said, "Hey, I want to make sure I have my two spaces in front of my house." So we know because he's a duplex, he wants to make sure both units have two parking spaces. So we know he's deficient in two spaces right there on site on his property. And same with the neighboring property. I'm not sure how many units they have there. I have a -2 if they have two units, or if they have, I think they have 2 to 3 dwelling units there. So they're deficient. Outside of that, you've got Nerdburger, which has a large parking area adjacent to it that's not improved, however. But you see people parking there time to time. There's other things that are there on occasion, but there is available parking. And one thing I'm going to point out after I get done with this is obviously as we continue to grow, if we grow, which is the anticipation, space is going to become more commodity. People are going to want to utilize that space. It's going to become more value. We want to make sure we're getting our highest and best use on these parcels. They come in to change and make future requests to change things. We want to make sure we're accommodating parking, and if there's space on lots, what is that space used for? So, like I said, there's that vacant lot next door to Nerdburger, which I understand this property uses for off-street parking. So those are the only two. And then there's one house right here on Sutherland Street that looks like they only have room for one parking space. Other than that, if you go through, you'll see where they have two-car tandems in many of these older homes. And then once we get back to this neighborhood, we have alleys, and they all either use front parking with either a garage and parking spaces, or they have parking spaces in the rear and garages back there. And I can show you really quick. So that's basically a negative of buildings versus no buildings. And you see, for instance, directly north of this property, these 5 properties are all owned by the same entity. And they're small, old historic homes, or would be if they were classified that way, but they're from the turn of the century, of the 19th century. And then they have garages. These are 3 garages in the rear, and then generally open space and parking back there. So as you look, obviously there's a lot of room. We're not accounting for slope and difficulty. Most of the difficult terrain, though, it slopes down towards Broad Street here. But for the most part, there's a lot of existing parking that people use behind some of these homes. Some of these are businesses, as you know, with improved parking lots. So just, again, looking at the totality of space for cars, there certainly is more room in the area to park on site. Though we do know we need to keep a close eye on street parking and make sure, again, that's equitable. So that said, last Tuesday night, we held a neighborhood meeting at 5 p.m. here in the council chambers. 6 members of the public attended. 3 spoke on to the record, expressing concerns of parking, and one concern with the existing site visibility at the Maple as approaching Hill Street on Maple, looking either direction. We looked into that. As of now, we don't have a site visibility issue. The plans don't show any additional site constraints. They do provide their site triangles that are required at the intersections. So we did examine that. And then those 3 that did speak did not in the immediate neighborhood or the surrounding properties. They were from the north or in this general area, but not immediately neighboring or in that neighborhood I just showed you. And then on my way in this evening, I received a phone call and a text from Mr. Gabriel Delansky, which owns the property right here on the opposite side of Nerdburger. He's been interested to sell his parcel, his lot. It's again a very older home, turn of the century home as well. I know the applicant did speak with him for a period, but he did go on record, or want to go on record, and I'll go ahead and read it to the record since I've got the microphone right now. I'm at the corner of the property located across the street from the attached project. My address is 410 South Hill Street, Globe, Arizona. My property taxes are currently paid in full, which we love. For the record, and as an affirmative defense to the past, present, and future actions of the City of Globe, the Globe City Council and Globe Planning and Zoning Commission, I hereby object to the proposed site plan as presented. Unfortunately, I've been fighting the viral infection for the last 18 days and couldn't attend. Sincerely, Gabriel Peter D. Luzansky. P.S. Copy of his objections been mailed to an attorney. So with that said, that's the extent of public input we have, aside from potential public input this evening. Staff's recommending a motion to approve. The site plan appears to be in compliance with the zoning that was approved, and the site plan was presented at the time of zoning. And I'd be happy to respond to any questions you have.
If I recall correctly, I believe I read that for, at least in this area, for every dwelling unit, or for every 2 dwelling units, there must be 1 parking space.
Correct. That's a city's senior housing parking ratio.
So are we talking about a total of 32?
That would be required to be on site if they didn't have the zoning approved, correct? And then they're showing 37 on-street parking spaces right now, immediately surrounding the property.
And the individual who had concerns about visibility, they were specifically speaking at the junction between Maple and Hill, that corner there?
Correct. Sitting at this crossing right here.
But that's the same corner where they have the site triangle, correct?
Correct. Site triangle defined there. And then, you know, currently it's with cars parked on street, you know, that would probably be the obstruction.
That's what I was thinking too, that it wouldn't necessarily be the building, but perhaps the vehicle parked there. But
You can see also on the site plan, the applicant, this was mentioned at the time of zoning as well, wanted to provide a loading, unloading kind of a area for the businesses across the street. Currently, they pull up in either direction and just park and then take dolly trucks and material products across either Nuremberg or the other building, the one that the regular shipments or deliveries. And it could be a potential location for a future transit.
so for that loading and unloading area, is parking ever permitted in that area, or is it exclusively for the use of?
The idea would be that it would be exclusive, reserved, hatched, as you see it, striped, to reserve that for as a concession to the neighbors, the business across the street.
Okay.
And again, also be utilized for a pickup location. I think that would be convenient.
Right, and how might that be designated? Are we talking a yellow hatch pattern painted onto the road and so forth, so it's clear and present that is for given use?
Correct. That's the idea. And part of this moving forward, depending on the situation with the site plan this evening, one of their requirements to submit is a paving or striping signing plan for the rights of way. And that's where we would see that detail of the handicap spaces striped, all striping that would occur surrounding on the adjacent right of ways.
And there is a nearby loading and unloading area. There is a perpendicular crosswalk area. I cannot recall off the top of my head, do we have any signage for that crosswalk? And might that be something, considering the scope of this or the scale of this development, could that be warranted to require pedestrian crossing signage?
Very much so. This morning we had a meeting with Public Works, and they mentioned we've gotten rid of that location because it doesn't meet ADA requirements. Across the street, it runs into a 6-inch curb. So as of now, the city does not get that as a crossing, though we know that would probably potentially be a good mid-block crossing, if you will. There's no stop sign on Hill Street to stop the traffic. So I think there would be some greater attention on the city's behalf to look at, okay, how is this where we would want a crosswalk? And if so, how do we make sure that's protected and sign? But it was striped at one time. Mr. John Angelo, our Public Works Director, is here. But he did mention, yeah, we don't meet our ADA requirements, so we don't want to stripe something as it had been when it could potentially be an issue for somebody in a wheelchair or not meet requirements. So again, that one is a good location, though we know that it's not something that the city striped recently and won't plan to stripe until there's
But the only thing they would have to do is like 6-inch curb.
yeah, cutting an apron, which coincidentally we're working on a grant, not in this particular neighborhood, but just beyond. So yeah, the city, I'm sure you recognize curbs that don't probably meet ADA and aprons and crosswalks that don't meet ADA requirements. So there is a focus and attention on the city, but it's definitely in this downtown proper right now. And there could be a focus and attention on that area in the future.
I heard about high school every day. So that's cheaper, in the board sometimes.
And to that point, the improvement up on the Devereaux Maple corner. So they're going to build out the sidewalk to protect the on-street parking, and it basically brings that sidewalk closer to the other side of the street. And then it's improved. These will all meet current ADA requirements for crossings, and you can see we've got to review it in greater detail. Some striping that the engineers proposed. Again, obviously, it's where we intersect the old building and the improvement across Maple. That's going to be an issue, but the striping and that protected corner for pedestrians is going to be a significant improvement in that corner for students, as well as the corner on Maple and Hill.
Are there concerns about parking at the school? I don't know.
I haven't been aware of the school having any issues with their parking. It's a private property. It's private property. The applicant has been in communication with them about a few different things, and he could speak to that.
What's the repercussions for them parking at the school?
Just making them mad, having them call the city saying, well, you need to enforce trespassing or something like that.
And I had a question about the actual official number of parking spots, like the actual striped ones. There's 37 of them, official ones,
Correct.
around
On
the
street,
street and
yeah.
by the school.
Correct. All just on these immediately abutting the site. So right through here on Devereaux, on the west side of Devereaux, south side of Maple, east side of Hill.
Now, Danny, you alluded to or briefly mentioned at least hypothetically the idea of limitations. I suppose we already have area, but limitations permitting, et cetera, for parking. How far might that discussion of that be on? Like there's kind of a general notion that's been raised.
Correct. We're just aware of resources, tools available to the city based on our current code. It authorizes the city engineer to stripe any city street as they wish and would warrant it. So we like to get the background, the information. What are the issues? What are those timing issues? What's your use? Where is this conflict? It's unfortunately not as black and white as you would think. It's just not make it available or something. We shoot for somebody, but you got to really get into the weeds. Who needs it for what times and things like that. So our position is that if this project develops, let's monitor that closely and make sure we don't have conflicts and be in front of it if there is something that comes up.
Okay, I was just curious how specific that discussion might have
Yeah, I have a question. I noticed bicycle parking is one of the key points that you brought up in the potential approval. Is there a example that we're looking at? Is there any be following any of that project?
Chairman Mahika, Commissioner, I'm not sure I understand your question. The school parking lot really hasn't been a consideration for sharing parking. What I do understand was in consideration was, hey, can we make apartments available, the market rate apartments or apartments available to teachers? And in that circumstance, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the first was in bicycles.
Yes, you see in your I need to add that to the recommendation when we get there. We have one condition of approval to include a minimum of 24 secure bicycle rack locations on the property, on site.
Okay, and my question was, is there something that's stating what that number needs to be? Are there requirements for the development of the property, or is it
No, the city is in need of developing a bicycle ordinance, a bicycle parking ordinance. But the applicant's amenable and they understand because it's we're going for more of a pedestrian transit oriented type of development that obviously bicycles are going to be a key component of preserving on-street parking spaces for others.
No, I think it's great. I just wanted to check and make sure or the was confirmed. 24 should be adequate. Thank you.
I have a question about the objection. Is it just an objection, general objection? You didn't go any deeper into why?
Correct. In a conversation maybe 3 weeks ago with the gentleman, he said it's going to block my view of the Pinal of the peaks beyond. That was parking, on-street parking. He wants to make sure that Nerdburger has their parking. He has plenty of on-site parking. But he complained about people obstructing his ingress patrons of Nerdburger, I believe, obstruct some of his driveways at times.
Who owns the other property right next to Nerdburger, the empty space? Is it Nerdburger?
Yes. It's Taylor and the two gentlemen, Dinah Taylor, his wife, I think, or fiance or girlfriend, and then another partner.
Good idea to just like make a parking lot.
Yeah, and oddly, there was some parceling that occurred in the past, and there's a house. Sorry. Yeah, if you can see, my screen's blocked by, there we go. Yeah, they carved out a parcel, and there's a house in the back too. So there's a easement for access to that parcel. So there's a few encumbrances that need to be looked at. But again, like I mentioned earlier, so this parcel right here has 4 or 6 units, and it wraps around the back of this parcel. So this parcel was split at some point and given to this gentleman, and they have a bunch of for all of their.
Yeah,
it's a multi-family. Oh, okay.
What, 454, so.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So it's not the corner house, it's the one.
The one in.
Yeah,
Exactly.
4 units, yeah.
Yeah, and they've got a bunch of parking that they've taken on the behind this gentleman that has the 2 tandem spots by parceling. And again, I think that's a good reminder of why we like to look at splitting or subdividing land and consider these things to make sure that they're always viable.
Chairman Mohica, I have a few questions, if that's not you.
Of course.
When this first came to our commission, there were several concerns raised by the public besides parking. And I understand that those things have been dealt with. And I just want to confirm that. So public safety was a situation that was brought up as far as traffic concerns or decisions around, when we have too many people in the area, then there may be a boost in robberies or things like that. I understand that, our public safety and police department, fire department, they've all assessed those things and have determined that there's, that the risks are not as large as were presented in the public hearing a year ago. And that they have spoken with the city council to assure them that, yes, we are equipped to handle, this building and the increase in residents in the area. So I'm not sure if it's the right time to ask that question, but I think it's important. I would like to hear from Public Safety Chief, if you would, because I know that was a question that's raised by the public.
Good evening, Commission. Makes my personality. Good. Well, I just do this. So there were some things that were brought up on the last meeting that I was here for. I think I addressed some of them that night. They were not accurate. The reality of it is this building being developed would actually benefit us public safety wise because it's taken away an abandoned building that is subject to vandalism on a constant basis, potential break-in for people to hang out in, and things like that. The people that you're bringing in there you're not bringing criminal element into it. This is a kind of a high-end area. It's affordable for people in the community, and we think it, from a public safety standpoint, is going to be hugely beneficial for the overall upgrade of the city. As far as the traffic issue goes, there's traffic up here and it ebbs and flows all the time. Whether we're having a special event or in summertime or weekends, it's a little cooler up here. It increases, decreases and stuff. We're not anticipating any major issues there. What I've seen from Dana and the actual people developing it, they've done their due diligence on making sure that they work with the city engineer, they work with the city as a whole to ensure that they're increasing public safety as they develop the product. For striping for parking, it would be beneficial if the city went ahead and striped both sides of the street going down through there and outline some of the parking. The reality of it is, it doesn't matter where you're in the city. Unless you're developing a large box store on a large piece of property, if you're developing anywhere in the downtown area or the historic neighborhoods, you're going to have issues that restrain parking and things like that. But that should not, in my humble opinion, stop us from doing that development. This is a great opportunity to rid the city, to maintain a historical building, rid the city of potential ongoing issues through vandalism and decay, and really kind of spruce the place up. So from our stance at the police department, we're absolutely 100% supportive of this project moving forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Chief. I appreciate that.
I'd also like to quickly throw out my observation as far as law enforcement goes. I think that this area would be very well patrolled, if you will, is within close range. That were there any incidences, I don't think law enforcement would have any trouble at all responding to this location.
Mr. Chair, Commission members, in terms of the fire department, like Chief Walter mentioned, we're taking a building that right now, in our view, poses a significant hazard because of the status, because of the condition it's in. And not only are we taking and updating that building, updating everything in that building, primarily we're going in and updating all of the fire protection systems, which are going to be a huge asset to emergency response. If you take a sprinkler system, for instance, a sprinkler system is designed to put water on a fire immediately, within seconds of when that fire starts, and confining that fire to a very immediate location. in addition, anything that goes in there has to be brought to the standards that our code state. So we're taking something that right now is more of a hazard to my person. And we're making it not only beautifying it, but we're taking it and making it much safer. For anybody that goes in there, firefighters that may have to respond to something within that building.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thanks, sir.
And then also, if we could, from Public Works, because there were concerns about whether or not the sewer system could handle the extra residents and, whether there was enough water infrastructure, pipes and things like that as well. So thank you, John.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Is in reference to utilities, actually, that area has been upgraded a few years ago. So the water system's actually in place, and even our main line, if you remember, possibly 6 years ago here, when we did our Hill Street paving project, that water line was actually renewed. So you actually got both services on both sides of the Hill Street complex here that actually have been new services. The sewer line itself actually has not been updated, but actually the capacity of it is quite large, so it would handle, we wouldn't foresee any problems there. And in reference also to, as far as the parking, there's some things that we've worked with our engineers, actually our engineering staff has actually been following, with the site plans and everything. So there is some possible, just like Chief Walters mentioned, some enhancements we can do as far as the speed limit signs, the pedestrian traffic signs. So those are enhancements that we can incorporate into the project. But when getting to this point is the most important, to see the design and the layout for that first. And then we can kind of, on the city side, we can do some striping to accommodate some of the other businesses across the road.
Thank you, sir.
And then if I may, I'm gonna close out, that way I'm all done. You don't have to worry about me anymore. So, those, the public works, utilities, the public safety, the fire systems, those were major concerns that were raised. And I feel assured by the speakers that we've had this evening on those matters. As far as parking goes, in my humble opinion as well, parking is an issue that we're gonna face with this. That's all there is to it. It's an issue that we've already raised and evaluated, and our city council, who represents this community, has decided that the benefits of this project outweigh the potential problems of parking. And this is a method that we could use to grow as a community and grow that financial strength to then address those problems later. If we wait to build parking lots for buildings that we can't get anybody to buy and renovate, then we're never gonna go anywhere as a community. And I wanted to state my opinion on that. And thank you, Chairman Mojica.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So I think I'm good with the questions. If everyone else is okay with the questions, I would like to invite the applicant up to present their proposal.
Good evening. This is efficient. My name is Dan Clockey, and I'm a member of the Gorman & Company community and team here. I think a lot of the projects have already been described, so I'm not sure. Maybe a couple of things just to add in. One of the great aspects of the building is the double volume gym, and so we're really excited that that's going to be community space. It'll be space obviously for the residents, but we might offer some opportunities in the community as well for some meetings. Dana already mentioned the plaque. We think it's important to honor the history of the place. We've been contacted by a bunch of people who went to school there. They wanted to see it. We're looking forward to having some tours along the way so people can go experience where they went to school so many years ago. In fact, there's a whole wall of pictures that were still up from when the school closed. And one of the people we toured through was like, "Oh my God, that's me!" And he pulled it right off the wall. So this obviously is a place that's really important to this community. We recognize that, we love it, and we're just excited about getting really close here to being able to start to work on it. So I don't know if you have any specific questions or not, anything else we can add. The only other thing I would add is one of the greatest things about this site is that it is so close to so many great things. You mentioned the Safeway, and we walk right down the street to the Safeway, all the different businesses on Broad Street. There's some healthcare that's close by. Right now, the bus stop is at Safeway, and there's one more at the Rebel Building. If we can convince them to stop and pick people up there, we will do that in a heartbeat. All of our projects, we would like to locate near public transportation. There's a lot of our residents don't have cars. And so having those kinds of amenities close by is really important to us. And so we totally recognize the concern about parking. We continue to look for alternatives. We've actually made lots of calls around that to try to figure it out, and we will continue to do that as well, knowing that it is a concern. But like I said, we're excited. We're very, very excited about this. It pains us to see the building in the shape that it's in right now. We're fixing it up in the coming months. And just so you know, we are looking to close probably the last week of May, and construction would begin. So we see fences going up around the whole place, and assuming all the permitting goes as planned, and we're in really good shape right now. So if you have any questions.
Not much of a question, but I would like to, first off, applaud how ambitious this is. And also it sounds like you have been in contact with some of the surrounding businesses. We've been even mentioned the school, well as Nuremberg across the road on Hill Street. Also the loading and unloading designated area, so that, you know, services can continue as usual without being obstructed by parking spots. So that's that wasn't much of a question, it was more of a statement. It is part of plan, and I'd also like to, I guess, comment on the architecture. It does look a bit more modern than the existing building, but I think at the very least the color scheme and everything is quite complementary to the existing structure.
And we did have consultations with the State Historic Preservation Office. And as Dana mentioned, sort of the thinking these days in terms of historic buildings is to have something much more plain that can be distinguished from what is there historically, so that it doesn't detract from, we'll call it the beautiful building, if you will. And so we took that to heart, and that's how we designed it. So that was deliberate that we did that. So hopefully folks are okay with that, but we're trying to follow the guidance of the State Historic Preservation Office.
So I have a question. Dana mentioned that you had conversations with the high school. Say for instance, when they close during the holidays, when people might have family coming to visit, is that like a consideration to be able to use their parking lot just because the school's out?
So we've had lots of conversations with them about it. I sat out there during the school days and counted cars and all that. There's space there. I know there's space there. I think there's some concern about others besides the school using that parking lot right now. We'll continue to speak with the school and see if they're interested. We've had many conversations with the superintendent of schools. We were looking to partner on some of the market rate units that Dana described. There's actually 8 of them in there, not 6, there's actually 8. And it just didn't work out, but we're gonna be happy to have teachers in those units, and we would love to have them living there so they can walk over to the school. And honestly, if they are, then they can probably park in the school parking lot. So I think there's solutions here, and as Dana mentioned, we're gonna continue to monitor this. We are a long-term community member here, and so we need this to work too, just like you all need it to work. So we will work hard at that and continue to look for options for parking. especially if it becomes a concern.
Right, and it seems like the city should be supporting, I mean, if the school's not open, it seems like there's gotta be some way, which is little placards, so it's, you know, you're legit and you're associated with the building.
We will keep working on it, I promise you that.
I'm excited about it.
I think it's anything else.
I have one more thing. Probably, important part of this is that I'm Sally, I'll also be foreman, obviously. We have all our financing lined up. So that's a great thing because in order to make this happen, we have to have all of that debt and equity. So we're working with it. It takes a little time to do the due diligence and all the effort to get there. But we have the commitments in place and we'll be ready to close this down in May. So that's the most important part.
Thank you. After that, is there anything else that brought to mind for the commission as far as any state line?
I'll just make the comment that I made the last time when I'm a merchant downtown, we're constantly looking for parking, and yet somehow people find a way to park and to participate downtown. So I think it's.
Yeah, I think it's been said before that you want our downtown to go straight. Commerce and every development that's going on.
I live across the street, so I've been waiting for that. I'm in the second story. I see it every morning. I think it's a great building, and the backdrop of that, how you guys designed it, I think it works. It's more like a backdrop. Looking forward to getting done.
That is, so you're gonna break ground roughly June, how long do you think it's gonna, the project gonna take?
17 months.
17 months? It's not that soon.
We'll have a big party, both groundbreaking and grand opening.
No.
All right, well, that's that. We don't have to formally enter a public hearing, but I would like to also take the opportunity for anyone else who may have a question or comment to approach the podium. If anyone would like to have any concerns addressed or make a statement on the subject. Of course, yeah, please approach it.
When you reach the podium, be sure to say your name and your address as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Salcido. I've spoken with Dan a couple of times. I actually grew up in the house that's right across the street from the junior high, in the little corner right there. So that one historical building, they were talking about some tires there. I mean, that's where we went, right? So that whole little corner there, I don't know if y'all pull it up. I actually am a realtor. So for me, I do a lot of different developments for around the state. So I'm very versed with this because I also owned, until probably last Friday, that little house you were talking about that's in that little easement side. I did sell that to somebody just recently. That house, I know that this whole project is wonderful. I'm not gonna say it's not. It is fabulous. I think that this is something that has to go. It's something that needs to be take care of the community, because I do work with what we call affordable housing, which there's no such thing, right? We know this, we're trying to implement it. But at the same time, I know that a lot of concern with the parking piece of it. And my idea, I know they've been talking with the schools. I know they've been trying to figure out where they're gonna put their spaces. A lot of these people probably don't have cars, but we are looking at Globe. A lot of these people do have cars here because they have to get from here to wherever, right? So I thought maybe a parking ramp. Maybe if the school doesn't want to share the bottom part, maybe there's a parking ramp we can help put in where the school has theirs, where the old Sonic was. And we can put something like that to be able to help with the parking. So the students would have access to it, the residents would have access to it, and it would alleviate a lot of that on-site, on-street parking that's happening there. Because I know that the people that just moved into that house last week, they have cars, they have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, and they have 3 vehicles and nowhere to park. Right, so they have 3 little spots down at the end, and then they have another, like Nuremberger parks in their little parking spot there. They just don't have anywhere to park their little cars. So it's like, they just bought there thinking, okay, I can have these 3 little spots down where the easement side is, and it's very difficult for them already, and they just got there. So, for me, one is parking up on the street already. If other residents take that spot, it's not gonna have anywhere to park. That kind of leaves it kind of hard for them, and I know you live at 454. Well, the place that's right next to the empty lot is also another triplex, or whatever that is. So they're deficient in 2 spots, and then Bronson owns the other part. You know, it's like there's all those places in there that are having that problem just with them. Now, again, I don't know if we could work with the school to build a parking ramp, figure out that part of it or something, but maybe that'll help. And not just that, but if the little bus comes around and stops in town, maybe they can pick up the parking ramp and take people downtown too. And it kind of alleviates that congestion. Just an idea. But this here is probably the best thing. I used to go to school dances there. This is probably the best thing I've seen, and I'm very happy you guys are doing something with it, because it is a beautiful site. Opinions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to approach and make a statement, ask a question? By reading the room, I think most of what needed to be said has. I guess we could take one more moment to have a discussion amongst the commission before approaching a motion.
I motion to approve the site plan for the Earl Street School redevelopment project, case number SV 22-04.
Do we have to add the amendment on the bicycle lane?
Please.
So I think it's,
Oh, right,
Right there.
okay, show location, rack storage on site, contain a minimum of 24 bicycles prior to permit issue.
I second.
Motion has been seconded. We shall take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. All righty, that was everyone. Justin, right? Okay, all right. So, okay, just making sure. All right, so, the ayes were unanimous and the motion passed with the condition of the bicycle ramp.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you as well. So now we're moving on to our future agenda items and scheduling of meetings.
Very good. Chairman, commissioners, a few things coming down the pipe here. We did receive a use permit request for a dispensary in the historic district. So we will be submitting that advertisement tomorrow morning. So you'll get more information on that.
We can only have one.
And I don't want to get on it. No, 2. One of each. So sorry, we'll cover that detail. I am getting a little ahead of myself there, but just want to prepare you that in the next month, you're going to have another hearing. And I assume we're probably going to have a meeting in between. So other than that, I can't think of anything major on your that would be following along as well. I did want to recognize your fellow commissioner, Mr. Justin Acevedo, for being elected president-elect of the Arizona's chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. So we're very privileged. Congratulations. Oh, well, with that, yes, that's no.
I have a question. We may not be able to, you may or may not be able to answer this. But grows, dispensaries, and then there's the production facilities that have a different hazardous nature. Do we have ordinances around each of those?
We do. As of a
Would
year
you
and a half
send
ago.
us that documentation for
Absolutely.
review? Thank you very much.
Do you prefer a link to, well, we'll follow up with it. in a minute.
Read it.
You said that there's two.
Allowed.
Wow, there's only one.
Oh.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, I have another unrelated. The marathon sign at the gas station doesn't match what was in the pictures of what we approved. Is that okay?
I'll drive by and take a look. What does not
Still have to
match?
figure out who part of it, and just put the marathon on top of it.
I'll make sure I follow up with them. Okay, I'll follow up. We'll make sure it's not a banner. Banner rack.
It's definitely not what we approved.
You got it. I'll be on it. Thank you.
I know, I bought these in, I'm like, that's so much stuff.
I should.
I have not been over there in quite some time, so.
Hopefully, maybe they've magically fixed it since I drove by it, but last time we were there, it still had the old AM part of it, they just stuck.
I hope it's a banner, a temporary banner. I'll make sure that we get that.
What about the
addressed.
pizza? So, do you know when that's gonna be?
I haven't seen a permit yet for it. No, no, I don't think we've received that. Yeah, it's new construction, putting, there's some details that they need to provide. All right.
Dana, landscape ordinances in the city. Is that something that has ever been explored a little bit more? I know there's not a whole lot there at the moment. Like street trees, parking lots, all that kind of stuff.
You know, certain newer zoning districts in our code kind of speak to some standards, but there's not a specific landscape ordinance that's applicable to the different various uses, residential versus commercial, parking lots and so forth, like you're familiar with in other communities around the valley. So no, but like in our manufactured home zoning district, there's a 1 tree per lot. That's the only place that we have. There's just a piecemeal type of landscape codes throughout the different districts, but we have not entertained that as of recent. I know it's certainly something we do need to codify, and we'd love some expertise and volunteer help to do that at some point.
Would that be something that I should be interested in exploring a little bit? It sounds like a little bit of a quiet season.
That's a great point. Let's go ahead and direct staff to look into landscape code, and we'll come back and after we meet with management and see where our priorities are with the council and our budget and everything else. And then, come up with a game plan.
Sounds good, thank you.
All right, well, I think I myself am quite satisfied with everything tonight. Unless there's anything else, I might suggest.
I hope she would adjourn.
Seconded. Tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.